So first thing first, Mulay, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm not too bad. So before we get into the music and everything, I'd like to jump back to something else, which is you lived in Arnhem for a
Yes.
little while, and we're based in the Netherlands. So, um, what are your memories of being in the Netherlands?
Oh, I really love being in the Netherlands. I still love the Netherlands. I still have a lot of friends who live there, and yeah, a lot of Dutch friends also from my
Okay.
studies. And so, yeah, I always enjoy being there. I really like it. Like
Okay.
the atmosphere, the people. I felt like everybody's always so relaxed and open, and yeah, it was a really good time.
Where in your creativity were you when you came here? Because you studied music when you were here in the Netherlands, right?
Yes, exactly. It was at the very beginning,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, I finished school and I knew music, what I wanted to do. And I felt like I was already singing back then.
Okay.
And I was confident with my voice, but I felt like I didn't only want to be a singer. I also wanted to be able to really compose and produce my own music and, just gather the skills to really realize my vision. So
Right.
that's why I chose to study music. And then in the Netherlands, when I started studying music, it was really, yeah, like meeting this whole universe of, like-minded people and suddenly being inspired and like finding your own sound. And I had my first band there. And
Okay.
yeah, it's like where everything kind of, started.
Well, you say you already knew you wanted to be in music. So first off, what made you kind of know that? What made you realize, well, no, I just want to sing. I want to be able to be creative.
Um, I don't know. I think yeah, like from an early stage on, like when I was a child, music definitely has always been a part of my life. Also,
Okay.
my father is working in music, in the
Okay.
music industry. Um, he has a label and is working a lot with like jazz and classical music and film music. So from an early age on, I was definitely surrounded by a lot of music and also confronted with a lot of very different genres
Sure.
and live music and musicians. And so probably like subconsciously that influenced me. But then, yeah, I was singing already in grammar school in the choir, and I was learning the clarinet as an instrument. It was my first instrument. And it just became more and more important. And then after school was really this question of what to do now. And I just thought, well, if I'm honest to myself, like my dream would be to make music. So I thought if I don't go full, like if I don't go all in now, and if I choose to study something else, it will always be like stay a hobby because I won't have enough time to really dig into it. So I was like, now or never.
Sure. When you, because you say then you started studying music, and that's kind of where you met like-minded people and you kind of developed your own taste and your own direction that you wanted to go in. When did that become apparent to you, or is it still somewhat of a search for you?
Well, I think there's always going to be, hopefully, there's always going to be development.
Sure.
And I'm always open to new inspiration. I think just like we change as persons, with time and experience, and we grow. I also hope to grow as an artist like that. So I don't want to limit myself to this is what I
Mm.
do now and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But it definitely, yeah, became clearer like the past years already, like during my studies, but also these past years since I'm living in Berlin and I
Yeah.
focused on my solo project. And the whole process, like for this debut EP of mine, was definitely like a moment of, okay, I know exactly what I want to do right now. And I'm not like, it's not anymore research. Like I know what I want and I found the right people and let's do this.
Right, and then perhaps for the next album, it's a new process, but for this one, you were very right. So let's get into the music then, because I read that Medusa was quite an old song, or one that you wrote quite a while ago. When was this? When you
It
first
was
started writing it?
almost, yeah, it was almost 7 years ago.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, I was still living in Arnhem back then.
okay. So what
Yeah.
made you write the song?
Well, my personal story behind it is that I went through a breakup. It was my first breakup from my first boyfriend, and it was very intense. And yeah, and I was in a very dark place afterwards. So that's like the initial inspiration for like where the song stems from or comes from. And and now in the context of the whole EP, of course, it's on one side like a very personal story that I'm definitely, working through with this. But on the other hand, it's also now a more general story, I feel like, from a female perspective.
Sure.
And about more than just my own heartbreak.
Because the rest of the songs on the EP, like Shame, are they about the same situation, or were they about different relationships? And
That's the thing. Like Shame is actually a song that developed later than most of the other songs. I think it's like even almost the newest song on the EP.
Okay.
I think I wrote Shame last year, and it's not about actually it's not really about a relationship. I wrote it more about the relationship to myself. So it was more about like a conversation within myself, like to myself. And but in the context of the whole EP, it's definitely like the idea is it's a conceptual EP, so it's really about one story, and it tells, as I said, like on one side, of course, my story, which is definitely about this period in my life, like 7 years ago.
Sure.
But then if I transported it to another level of like more general, like the perspective of a woman, and also the story of, like more general, like going through a very dark period and kind of facing your own demons and coming out of the other, like on the other side as a new and better person, and kind of learning that sometimes these bad experiences we make and those dark times we go through are necessary to lead us to where we are meant to be, kind of.
What role does music play for you in these difficult times?
Oh, a big role, actually. I really liked this year was, I mean, for everybody, I guess, like super intense and very, different. And we all have spent a lot of time at home, I guess.
Too much time at home.
Yeah, definitely too much time. And for me also, it was the past years I've played a lot, and I've also been, traveled a lot and stuff. And so it was a big difference to the past year. And at the beginning, of course, you're kind of like, oh yeah, maybe it's also nice to have some time at home and, get your stuff sorted out. But then after a while, it becomes a bit intense. So music definitely helped me to get through that. I kind of rediscovered also my love for listening to music and listening through albums and stuff, because I had the time and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not a person that is actually like most people. I think people are going to be surprised because I make music, but I'm not a person that is always listening to music. Like, I'm not the person of like, oh, I wake up and I put on a playlist. No, I'm like, I spend a lot of time in silence, actually.
Is that sorry to interrupt, but is that to kind of to promote the creativity in a way, to kind of let your mind be free for impulses and creativity?
Maybe not. It's not a conscious decision in that regard, but I guess maybe that's the case. I feel like I need the silence, because there's like, I'm also not a person. I can't really, like, if there's music on, I also listen to it. So I enjoy like to consciously listen to an album if I have time. Then on my own, then I'm totally in the zone and in a different world. But when it's like, when I'm with people, have a conversation, then it's next, like it's on. It's not always the case, but sometimes I find it really distracting. So yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I can imagine that because to me, still listening to music on headphones is a way better experience, and when you're consciously engaged with it, than just putting it on and doing other stuff. But let's get back to kind of the songwriting, because when you, let's say 7 years ago, when you wrote those songs, what did they do for you? Did they help you kind of understand what you were going through?
Definitely. Especially with Medusa, it was really the first time that I really felt like my subconsciousness was taking over. It's like this cliche, what songwriters talk about, like, oh my God, a higher power took, but it really felt that way. I was just like, like I didn't have, I was just starting to write, and I wrote the whole song without, once like going back, thinking about anything. It just kind of came out of me and poured out of me. And then the song was done, like from start to finish, kind of. So, so very weird, intense experience. And and it definitely helped me, like afterwards, like reading it, you realize like, oh, so this is actually what's like really going on inside of you. And it's often like that with songwriting for me, that I write something and then maybe a month later I go back and read it and I'm like, oh, you already knew where you were going. You were just not ready to kind of see that. But like if you read it now, you're like, oh, I already knew it all. You know, it's
Sure.
weird.
Well, can you give me an example of you can take your pick, but something on that you describe on the album that you kind of had to realize through making that song?
I mean, with Medusa, for example, I think when I wrote the song, as I said, I was in a place, I was just very self-destructive and not my best, like a kind of my own enemy, and like in a very dark place. And when I wrote, after writing the song and reading it, I realized that that it all was also kind of a like scream maybe for help or like for attention, or it wasn't all like just about like, oh, I'm so low, but it was also, there was still some kind of sparkle of hope that, like, you know, so I'm kind of, it helped me understand like where my behavior came from and what it actually, like what my goal and what it was actually, and also that I wasn't on the right path, obviously. So it was definitely in that sense like kind of therapeutic, if you want to say so.
Sure, and then, like you say, it's more than just about you personally. It's kind of taking this greater perspective as well. So, what is it like that you put out songs like these, songs like "Shame," and people can find something in it? What does that do to you?
Well, of course, it makes me really happy if if it speaks to people and if they can identify with it. I mean, that's of course super nice to hear. And also for me, I mean, this year, you know, with all the releases, it was the first time really with my solo project to get this like instant, like this feedback, because before, I had all these songs and I wrote, like I played live and stuff, but I never released anything solo. So it was really a new experience to receive this like in like direct feedback from strangers in a way, who felt like who were touched by the music or whatever, and it was a really beautiful experience.
And I can imagine, especially with a song like "Shame," like you said. Well, let's start. I just wrote down one line. Who is supposed to love you if you don't love yourself? So it's about that self-empowerment feeling. Why, and this is going to sound stupid, but why is that so important?
Oh my God, why is it so important? I feel like, I mean, in life, in the end, what do we, like, what is this? I can go very far out, you know, like, what is the sense or the meaning of life? But, but in the end, I mean, I feel like we're all kind of striving for a way to be happy, obviously, in a way. And I think that in our society and with media and everything, there's so many wrong communications in a way of what makes you happy or what you should be, and also, you know, like what is like worth striving for, also money and wealth, and like where are the values, you know, in our society. And I think with all of this, like all of these distractions every day happening, and informations like being put on us and pressures, it's the only thing that kind of can keep us sane, and like is our only chance kind of to ever find happiness, if we are like in peace with ourselves. And yeah, that's what I believe in. So
how do you, and you can take this as personally as you want, but how do you balance those things? Because you mentioned, well, you've been and everybody has some self-destructive tendencies, I would say. How do you balance those where you're not just not caring, but at the same time also not judging yourself too harshly?
Yeah, I think it's like the biggest challenge ever. And I also always feel like, for me, I always feel like it's important to know, like to be aware of what's, you know, that you shouldn't be that hard to yourself. Like in Shame, you know, that's what I said, like why I wrote the song to myself. And I don't feel like now that I wrote it, I completely manifested it, and I'm not ever gonna have those doubts ever again. You know, it's a song that I could also like listen to, you know, over and over. And I definitely, sometimes it's like this voice in your head. I feel like we have like, you know, different voices in our heads always in a way. And this is like this voice of like your inner friend who's like reminding you of like, it's all right. And I feel like we all need that from time to time. And me, especially, like, I feel like it's always going to be a process probably. But I now feel like I'm definitely on the more like stronger side of this process in a way of like, being more, feeling good about myself and about where I'm standing. But thank you. but it's still, it's going to be in like ongoing process throughout life, like for every person.
Yes.
Yeah.
When it comes to the music then, because you mentioned that you thematically this record, you kind of had a good vision of what this was going to be. Was it also true for this kind of how you wanted it to sound, how you wanted to use kind of the sonic landscapes?
Yeah, definitely. I had, it was a long process, and I'm really happy that I gave myself this process, because it's the first release, and that's why like it took this time to really find what I wanted and where I wanted to go. And with the songs, for example, like Medusa, I wrote 7 years ago, and then I first wrote it on the piano, and so it was like just piano and vocals. Then I brought it into my band back then in Arnhem, and we played it with the band, and then at a few concerts, and then I was like, it doesn't feel right, like I want something else for it. And then I started like producing it. And then there was like, I think 4 different versions that I produced. I was like, always, no, I want something else. Like really kind of digging and like searching and going in every direction. And then like the past 2 years in Berlin, I started like, produced more, and was searching kind of for people to collaborate with, who understood my vision and who were willing to take it to another level in terms of production, because I didn't produce for such a long time yet, and I knew like the skill level that I want to achieve, I cannot yet achieve. So I need some help with that. And then I was lucky to meet Rick Vincent-Will, who I co-produced the EP, and who was really willing to kind of just follow my lead in a way and be my hands. And that was just a perfect match. And then it all came together really quickly, because, as I said, like, because there were all these years of like trying and searching, and then the past 2 years I was like, I totally knew exactly what I wanted, so it wasn't really a big question anymore.
So does that make the work on it easier, or is it still the very difficult process? Because once you know what you want, like you say, sometimes you don't have the skills yet, and you need to get there in other ways. But once you know what you want, I would imagine it would be very the process would be a lot easier, or a lot.
Yeah, I guess so. I think every coin has 2 sides. I think it's probably. I mean, I'm glad I know what I want. I think it's better probably than to be lost and not know where to start. But then on the other hand, it can like swap over, and that's for me definitely the case, to like the super perfectionism. Like you know exactly what you want, and you kind of get obsessed. So, so for example, the mixing process of the whole EP was like the most intense ever. Like we did it this year, and it was supposed to, like the first thing, it was supposed to come out in spring already, actually. And then we took like so long with mixing, because I was like, we went into songs with like just seconds of songs 5 times. And I know like Rick, who also mixed the project, I'm like so thankful for his patience with me, because I think he like totally freaked out, because I was like the 5th time, like, no, we have to go into this drop again, like something's not right yet. And so it was like so much about detail and so much time that went into it. And I had moments where I thought, am I ever going to be happy? Like, am I ever going to be satisfied? Is it just my head? Is it even possible to reach that level? And then luckily, after a while now, I managed to meet that moment where I was like, oh my God, it's all perfect. It's the way I want it, and I'm happy.
Oh, that's an interesting thought, because I ask artists this every once in a while as well, because there's, especially considering kind of today's technology and what we can do, there's kind of endless possibilities. So do you kind of, you have to be strict for yourself in a way. So okay, now I won't touch it anymore. It's good. So are you learning kind of how to do that?
Yeah, for me, it's still, I mean, yes, I guess, I don't know. For me, it's like this weird, as I said, like with music, I think in general, there's no wrong or right? Like with art, you make the decision. If you're the artist, you can just be like, that's how I want it to sound. So in the end, like, who's going to tell you this is how it's supposed to be? Like, you're the only person who can like confirm to you that it's how it's supposed to be. And sometimes, and I love that because it's like the power that you give yourself as a creative. And then on the other hand, it's also hard because, yeah, like as you say, like sometimes it's hard to get to that moment. But so far, luckily, I always at some point just had like an inner, it's just about guts mainly for me.
Right.
Because yeah, otherwise I don't know what to do. Like I can't tell you. I can only tell you what I feel. And if I feel like it's how it is, it's how it's supposed to be, then it's good. And if I don't, I can't help it.
Fair enough. Well, you mentioned as well kind of this being your first kind of body of work you're putting out, and that's obviously a very important step or moment. So how do you see this EP kind of, what do you hope people will hear in it or hear in what you do?
Well, for me, my goal, or what means goal, like what I want to do with music is like express honest and raw emotion. That's where I come from. Like my initial, why I write is just to deal with like inner conflicts or like inner emotions that are just there. And I feel like often, also in society and everything, things are simplified a lot, like, and I'm not judging, I think like sometimes a love song just about like being in love is of course like totally fine, because sometimes life can just be that easy. But I think like many times it's not, and we can like feel different things, like we can feel two different things that are totally contradicting at the same time. And it can be very complicated. And yeah, and I want to express like all those layers and like all this duality of emotion and of like, being a human being and what it means, and be honest. And I hope like with this first body of art that people really get to understand, or at least like get a glimpse of who I am as an artist, and that I am truthful, and also of course communicate my aesthetic, and yeah, have a good like introduction to the world.
Final question then, because you mentioned aesthetics, and I watched a couple of the videos, and how important is that visual element, kind of the aesthetics of what you do to you?
It's super important to me. It's for me, it's like really one, like it belongs together. Okay. So I was always like already when I started studying music, I had a very strong vision, like also visually, of what I wanted, like because I always felt like, music, if you perform on stage, for example, people are going to hear you, but they're also going to see you, and it's going to affect the way also they hear the music, because it's like all our senses working together in a way. So I always felt like it was important for me to, have like communicate like one thing, and have it all like work together as one, like be kind of a interdisciplinary collaboration, Right. So, and I always like really enjoyed like collaborating with like other artists from like different disciplines, and with like dancers and like visual artists and whatever. And also for the music videos, especially for me, it's always when I write a song, I most of the time have a vision in my head of what I like see images. So it's very like the whole process is kind of being developed together. It's not for many people. I think it's like there's a song and then they're like, no, I have to do a music video. It's like, oh, okay, what are we gonna do? So that's not how it is for me. For me, it's like very happening at the same time. So that's why I was so excited with the video, like with the EP, that I was able to do like this push through like this visual concept that I wrote also. Okay. So
yeah. Because well, final question to round off then, this interdisciplinary approach. So is it pretty much any form of creativity that you are attracted to? For instance, do you ever draw, or do you ever paint?
I actually did, like when I was younger, when I was 13 or something. It was super cute. My mother took me to like the museum in Munich, where I grew up, where they had all these stone figures from like the Greek and Roman times. Yeah. And I was like I don't know, 11, 13 years old. And I was sitting there and like, painting sketches and stuff, like super. And all those art students, they like would give me tips, and because they found me so cute, and how to shade and do things. And I loved it. I was really passionate about it. So, but it kind of, like the music got more important, and now it's like, unfortunately, I'm not painting that much anymore. But
No,
yeah.
it's interesting that you have all these. That I think it says a lot about creative people, that it's usually not just one thing. It's not just singing or something. It's a whole collection, like you say. So that's very nice to hear. All right, Mulay, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
See you very soon.